There are known knowns, known unknowns, and unknown unknowns, but there are also unknown knowns. The ancient and esoteric Order of the Jackalope is a secret society devoted to unearthing and sharing this forgotten knowledge. Each episode we take one of these strange stories or amazing facts and share it with you. No topic is off limits, except for the obvious. Crunchy or Wrong, presented by number 7 and number 13.
Recently, I heard about an article about how for every peanut butter sandwich you eat, it adds 30 minutes to your life. It had me thinking about my own peanut butter consumption. Growing up, my dad was in the military and we moved about every 4 years. My mom, who loved to cook and was a good cook, and my family is adventurous in trying new foods and cuisine, but peanut butter was my constant safe food. It might sound odd to hear this, but about 95% of the lunches I'd eat at school were peanut butter and jelly. Bread didn't matter, white or wheat. It had to be crunchy peanut butter. And I started out with grape jelly, but switched to strawberry by the time I was 13. From first grade to 12th, maybe I might have pizza on pizza day. Maybe. But a PB&J with carrot sticks or a piece of fruit and chocolate milk was my lunch. Maybe I'd have chips. Maybe I'd get a cookie. But that was it. When I think about how pretty boring it sounds. But with all the moving and switching schools and not wanting to go in line and have to interact with others, had me eating this for lunch. I've never been a fan of deli meats. Most leftovers were for dinner the next evening. And it being the 70s/early 80s, well, there were no real thermos containers for kids' lunchboxes that were any good. Good old PB&J was my jam, literally. So for about 2,000 days of my life growing up, I had that sandwich. Fast forward to being an adult living on my own. I still always have the fixins for my sandwich. It has evolved a wee bit. Better bread, usually one with a crust that has a bite to it. Baguettes are always good. I still prefer strawberry jam. The peanut butter still has to be crunchy. I'm not a fan of other nut butters. Cashew is the only one that comes close. But it requires apricot jam. And I do mean jam, not jelly. I prefer the fruit bits in jam versus the clear jelly. Back in the early days of the internet, when online groups and message boards were new, I was in one with a few other chefs, and I recall one of the fellow chefs asking, "What do we eat when we get home after a long 12-hour day at work?" I replied PB&J with salt and vinegar chips. To me, the epitome of a sandwich. Sweet, crunchy, creamy, salty, heaven. It was then I found out a few of my other chefs also had PB&Js after work. Some added cheddar cheese, one added bacon, some preferred other chips like Doritos. One just had peanut butter and pickles, gherkins to be exact. Whatever you like flavor-wise, it's an easy food that requires no special preparation, and it has a long shelf life. Peanut butter marries with many flavors, and I've had it in many different cuisines. It has been a very successful global food that is from the Americas like tomatoes and potatoes. You should try a sandwich today.
That was a lovely, heartwarming personal essay, folks, and now I'm here to drop a load of boring facts on it. Now, I believe the study you mentioned at the beginning of your essay is the Nature Food paper, Small Targeted Dietary Changes Can Yield Substantial Gains for Human Health and the Environment by Katerina S, Stylianou, Victor L. Fulgoni III, and Oliver Jolliet.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that received a lot of press last year because it had an attention-grabbing but statistically suspect method of ranking foods based on how many minutes it would add to your life. At first, it rated items based on how good they were for your health. On that metric, peanut butter fared well, but it wasn't the best. Sardines and tomato sauce added a whopping 82 minutes to your life, with peanut butter and other nuts running a distant second.
Why sardines?
I think they're good in omega-3 fatty acids.
Sorry, that was my cat hairball noise.
Yeah. However, the study then did a second ranking that adjusted those scores based on how good the production of those food items were for the environment. Sardines and other nuts dropped off the list entirely, leaving peanut butter alone at the top of the pack. Every PB&J adds 33 minutes to your life, which is just enough to offset the 35 minutes you lose to every hot dog and the 70 minutes you lose to having a corned beef sandwich. Peanuts, it turns out, are really great for the environment because they're not actually a nut. They're actually a legume like chickpeas or lentils that returns more nitrogen to the soil than they take out of it.
The chickpeas and lentils are very good for you.
The peanut plant originated in the Grand Pantanal region of South America near the border of Brazil and Bolivia and was first cultivated about 4,000 years ago. It spread gradually throughout the rest of South America and then into the Caribbean and Mexico, where it was discovered by Portuguese and Spanish colonizers who spread it to the rest of the world. It quickly became a staple crop in many regions, including West Africa and Southeast Asia. One place it did not catch on? The United States.
Why do you think that is?
For some reason, Americans considered peanuts to be a garbage crop fit only for animals and, slaves. That attitude shifted during the Civil War when disruptions in the supply chain meant that people could no longer afford to be picky eaters. Turns out, soldiers actually liked the taste of peanuts, and after the war they became a popular snack food, though they didn't become a cash crop until the 1880s when mechanical harvesters made large-scale farming of peanuts possible. These people were eating peanuts either straight from the shell or roasted. Do you know who invented peanut butter?
It wasn't George Washington Carver.
No, that man was totally horny for peanuts, though. He famously invented over 300 uses for peanuts, including turning them into wallboard, paint, and soap. Later in life, he even suggested peanut oil rub-downs as a miracle cure for polio. And every once in a while, he would even turn peanuts into edible but unappetizing meals.
Oh, has verified by the cookbook he wrote.
Yes, those recipes are, let's say they're hearty without being flavorful.
Did the man understand the concept of salt?
No, apparently not. And as you said, he definitely did not invent peanut butter. The first peanut butter was likely made by the first South American cultivators, who would use a mortar and pestle to grind raw peanuts into a sticky paste for cooking, often as a base for a sauce. That's still a common practice in the world anywhere peanuts are cultivated and eaten. But this sticky paste is only passing resemblance to modern peanut butter. In 1884, Canadian chemist Marcellus G. Edson received a patent from the U.S. government for the manufacture of peanut candy. Edson's process produces a slickly sweet paste of ground peanuts, oils, and sugar with a lard-like consistency that sounds pretty much straight up unappetizing and entirely unlike modern peanut butter. However, it's tasty in small quantities, especially when enrobed in chocolate, but, then what isn't?
Chocolate cures all.
Yeah. For years, Edson's process was used to make little chocolate peanut butter treats by confectioners across the country. Maybe peanut butter was first produced in 1890 by George A. Bale of St. Louis, when a local doctor asked him to produce a nutrient-rich food suitable for patients with bad teeth and poor digestion. Bale settled on peanut butter, and history was made. Or maybe not. There are some huge problems with this story. It's not clear why a doctor would turn to Bale, whose specialty was manufacturing snack food, to make anything healthy. And there are no records of Bale manufacturing peanut butter before 1914, over 2 decades later. Here's what seems more likely. Bale had been making a snack food spread named Cheese Nut, made by mixing soft cheese and ground nuts, and it did not sell well. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, can't imagine why.
Was that the precursor to those cheese balls, you think? Crappy versions?
I think that might be where he was trying to go. Anyways, it didn't sell well. Later, he turned to making peanut butter as a way of recouping the losses he'd incurred on expensive grinders and pressers. This version of the story seems more legit, but it also pushes the timeline back to the late 1890s, which takes Bale out of the running for the title of inventor. Perhaps the true origin of peanut butter lies with Dr. John Harvey Kellogg of the Battle Creek Sanitarium in Michigan. Dr. Kellogg was a Seventh-day Adventist and practiced a vegetarian diet, which he also forced on patients in his sanitarium. He was always experimenting with new recipes, searching for foods high in protein and other nutrients. And like Bale, he was also searching for something invalids could easily eat. Around 1893, Dr. Kellogg and his younger brother Will made the first modern peanut butter by grinding the nuts in an industrial grinder and then running them through the rollers they were already using to make cornflakes, producing the first modern peanut butter. It was perfect for his needs, low in cholesterol, high in protein, and a good source of vitamin B and folic acid. Vitamin B and folic acid hadn't been discovered yet, but he would have flipped over them if he'd known about them. Or maybe this story isn't quite true either. The Kellogg recipe differed from modern peanut butter in two key ways. First, instead of roasting the peanuts, the Kellogg's boiled them. They were under the mistaken impression that roasting the peanuts caused the oils to go rancid faster, and also roasting peanuts caused them to develop flavor, which Dr. Kellogg considered to be sinful.
Yeah.
For similar reasons, they didn't add any salt to the mixture either. Now, you can argue about whether Edson Baylor Kellogg deserves any credit for inventing peanut butter. In truth, none of them really deserve the credit. But you can't deny that Kellogg was the one who made it popular. He was basically, I think you said earlier, he was a food influencer.
Well, when you think about it, isn't he the antithesis of how society in general was viewing food? The rich, luxurious amounts of food, and he was taking it back to a more basic level.
Ironic then that a person who was opposed to rich food made food that only the rich could afford to eat, which we'll get into in a moment. Basically, he was a food influencer, and he turned peanut butter into a pop culture health food craze. One of the first the country had ever had, rivaled only by the introduction of cornflakes by Kellogg a few years earlier. Within a few short years of peanut butter's introduction at the San, it was being served at health resorts all across the country, and then started to spread out of the sanitaria into the homes of the rich and into ladies' tea rooms. They were the only ones who could afford peanut butter. The product they were consuming was very similar to natural peanut butter, except that in those days, before widespread electrical refrigeration, the peanut oils would separate and go rancid very quickly. That meant that peanut butter had to be consumed fresh, which meant grinding it shortly before eating. The grinders cost a small fortune, as you can well imagine. They also weren't eating peanut butter the way we eat it today. Yes, they would spread it on bread and make finger sandwiches with it, but it was often paired with other food items that seem odd to us. There are the usual suspects, jellies and jams, apples and celery, but also bread and butter pickles, carrots, cabbage, gingerbread, and tomatoes. The Bible of French cooking, the Russe Gastronomique, suggests serving peanut butter on lettuce with garden cream, chervil, and tarragon, which sounds super gross.
It sounds interesting. I mean, when you consider that garden cream is the equivalent of modern-day cream cheese with fresh vegetables or herbage in it. A lot of restaurants make stuffed French toast with peanut butter and cream cheese. Why not make it a touch savory?
All right. Maybe not as gross as I think.
Or maybe very gross.
Yeah. Middle America didn't get its first real taste of peanut butter until the 1904 St. Louis World's Fair and Louisiana Purchase Centennial Exhibition. Concessionaire C.H. Summer had a small stand where he would hand grind peanut butter while you waited. Soon, the middle class had a taste for peanut butter, and it started showing up in general stores across the country. The problem was that general stores sold peanut butter the same way they sold everything else. It was stored in a big communal vat, and you had to scoop it out of that into your own container. It wasn't ideal. The vats were less than sanitary, and they had to be stirred multiple times a day to prevent the oil from separating, and as a result, they were always on the verge of going rancid.
I don't want to know how many kids stuck their fingers in it.
Oh, no. Pickle barrels are loaded down with salt and vinegar, and I still shudder at the fact that I used to just stick my snot-covered hand in there.
Okay.
Why
would you do that?
In my defense, I was like 5.
What 5-year-old likes pickles that much?
Yours truly. Anyway, the first large-scale producer of peanut butter was the Atlantic Peanut Refinery of Philadelphia, who also received the first trademark on the phrase peanut butter in 1898, only to lose it about a year later. Atlantic was followed into the market by Beechnut and Heinz about a decade later. None of those companies currently makes peanut butter. Well, Heinz does, but they only serve in those little single-serving containers that you see at diners, and they don't sell it direct to consumers.
In fact, my life, I don't recall ever seeing one.
Peanut butter couldn't really catch on as a kitchen staple until it could be sold in tins and jars. That would require it to be shelf-stable, which wasn't going to be possible until the invention of hydrogenation. The process of hydrogenation involves taking a vegetable oil and then bubbling hydrogen gas through it. The hydrogen atoms bond with the carbon atoms in the soil, basically replacing electrons and elongating the molecules. This makes the molecular structure more flexible and allows the molecules to stack and create dense crystalline structures, which are stable at room temperature. Hydrogenation also creates trans fats, which can cause arteriosclerosis. but the amount it produces are so minuscule that you'd have to eat a tub a day for it to be a real factor. A little hydrogen never hurt anyone, except maybe the people on the Hindenburg.
No, too soon.
The first process for hydrogenating peanut oil was created by Pittsburgh inventor Frank Stockton in March 1921. The Stockton process produces a fully hydrogenated oil, which is a little bit waxy and not very appetizing looking, but on the other hand, it also means you need less of it to stabilize your product. Stockton licensed his patent to Heinz, which began using it to stabilize their product. A second process for hydrogenating oils was invented just a month later in April 1921 by California entrepreneur Joseph Rosefield. The Rosefield process produces a partially hydrogenated oil, less stable at high temperatures, but gives the resulting product a delicious creamy mouthfeel. Rosefield licensed this process to Swift & Company, which used it to make a peanut butter that they first called Delicia and then Dainty, before settling on Peter Pan. In 1932, a new management team at Swift tried to halve the royalties they were paying to Rosefield to license his patent. Rosefield responded by revoking their license, forming his own company, and selling a competing brand of peanut butter called Skippy. Now, as much as I personally don't like Skippy, I do have to credit Rosefield for also coming up with the next major innovation in peanut butter technology. Opinion polls revealed that some people thought Skippy was too creamy, and he thus came up with the innovation of adding chopped peanuts back into the mix at the end of the process, and thus crunchy peanut butter, the one true peanut butter, was born.
Word.
Studies actually show that America is almost evenly split between those who love creamy peanut butter and those who love crunchy peanut butter. Women tend to prefer creamy by a small margin, as do residents of the East Coast, but it is the official position of this podcast that crunchy is best and those who like creamy are wrong.
Very wrong.
So by the 1930s, peanut butter was now being sold in individual self-stable jars. The combination of peanut butter with the age-old practice of canning jams and jellies, and the then recent innovation of sliced bread led to the most amazing culinary innovation, the peanut butter and jelly sandwich. The PB&J had been a staple since peanut butter was first served in tea rooms. In 1901, the Boston Cooking School magazine suggested mixing peanut butter with crabapple jelly, but now it was a convenient and delicious anytime food. And cheap, too, which helped during the Depression. The final big brand to enter the picture was Jif, which was started by Procter & Gamble in 1958. P&G were less interested in making a quality peanut butter and more interested in leveraging the emulsification processes that they had invented for Crisco. First, they took out the flavorful peanut oils, which could be sold more profitably elsewhere, and replaced them with cheaper and less flavorful alternatives like soybean oil and canola oil. To make up for the lost flavor, they added sugar and molasses. The result was way too goopy to spread, so they increased the percentage of hydrogenated oils to a whopping 25% and added other chemical stabilizers on top of that. The result was less of a peanut butter and more of a peanut-flavored paste that was less than 50% peanut by weight. And popular because it was cheap. This led to one of the first public outcries over modern processed foods, and a debate that raged for over a decade. On one side you had Procter & Gamble, which resented being told what it could sell as food. On the other side you had Ruth Desmond and her Federation of Homemakers, who wanted their peanut butter to be nothing but peanuts. And on yet another side, you had the other peanut butter manufacturers who wanted some standards, preferably stringent enough to drive Jif out of the market, while still allowing them to adulterate their own products. Trapped in the middle, you had the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. In the end, the FDA set a rule that peanut butter had to be at least 90% peanuts by weight, no more than 5% fat, and contain no added preservatives, artificial color and flavor, or vitamin fortifications. These rules went into effect in 1971, and all the major manufacturers scrambled to comply with them. As a side effect of the standards, all of the major manufacturers switched from peanut oil to other, cheaper oils, and switched from partial hydrogenization to using some variety of Frank Stockton's full hydrogenization process. Skippy, in particular, is a bit touchy about it. Since there were now standards for peanut butter, that meant you could now buy standardized peanut butter. The National Institute of Standards and Technology sells a standard reference material peanut butter, SRM number 2387. I briefly considered buying some for the podcast, but it costs $350 a jar, and the minimum order is 3 jars, and this podcast makes no money.
We watched a podcast that had people testing generic-ish regular shelf store-bought peanut butters to high-end peanut butters. And the chef who was describing them described them to 86% peanut.
Yes.
Now, that doesn't meet American standards for peanut butter. Do they sell, and what do they call those types?
Well, in America, you could not legally sell that as peanut butter. You would probably have to sell it as processed peanut butter spread or something like that. It's the difference between cheese and processed cheese food product.
So be aware if you go overseas, check the label, see how much peanuts are in your products.
Sometimes they're not even adulterating with anything we wouldn't put in our peanut butter, too. Mexican peanut butter, for instance, is typically 12 to 13% sugar, which is about double what American peanut butter is.
I wish we had found some.
Strangely enough, again, couldn't find it in the stores because you can't legally sell it as peanut butter. Also, starting in the 1970s, the industry switched the type of peanuts they were using. There are 4 major varieties of peanuts: Valencia, Virginia, Spanish, and runners. Virginia and Spanish are the most flavorful and generally the ones people like to eat, but they are also tricky to grow and therefore expensive. Runners, on the other hand, grow quickly and produce high yields and are therefore cheap, but have little oil and very little flavor. To use a coffee metaphor, if Spanish and Virginia are Arabica, runners are Robusta. As a result, they were the peanuts that were still being used for animal feed. In the late 1960s, agricultural scientists developed a new variety of runners that were oilier and therefore had more flavor. Enough flavor that all the large peanut butter manufacturers said, good enough, and switched their recipes to use runners exclusively. After all, when you industrialize food production, flavor is usually the first thing that gets thrown out of the window. Only a few specialty peanut butter manufacturers continue to use Virginia and Spanish peanuts. As a result of the new standards and the switch to runners, the 3 major brands are now pretty homogeneous. There are some small differences between them, but the majority of the differences are purely branding and not much else. The only other major innovation in the peanut butter making process came in 1968 when Smucker's started marketing Goober Grape, a pre-made mixture of peanut butter and jelly for the truly, truly lazy.
No comment.
I guess there's one other innovation, but it's more like a step backwards. As the health food movement started in the 1960s, processed foods like industrially produced peanut butter were an easy target. On the other hand, there's nothing inherently wrong with peanuts and peanut butter, especially since they are a great source of protein for those trying to live on a vegetarian diet. So health food nuts started making peanut butter without the chemicals, without the hydrogenated oils, without the sugar, and sometimes even without the salt, essentially reverting to the natural product that people would have consumed at the turn of the 20th century. The first major brand of natural peanut butter was Deaf Smith Peanut Butter out of Deaf Smith County, Texas, though they had the good sense to rebrand themselves Arrowhead Mills right before their national launch. Today, peanut butter is still one of the most popular foods in the United States. The average American eats about 3 pounds per year, and to meet that demand, we use about 25% of our peanut crop to make enough peanut butter to fill the Grand Canyon to a depth of about 1 inch. Outside the United States, not so popular. The average European only eats about 1 tablespoon a year.
That just mind boggles me. It boggles my mind.
Okay, so here's the fun part. We thought it might be interesting to wrap up the podcast with a tasting flight of peanut butters, comparing major brands to natural peanut butters with a variety of textures and tastes, and also trying out some of those unusual tea room flavor combinations. And then we thought, why not get the opinion of an actual peanut butter expert, which is to say a 6-year-old? So here's a highly edited recording of a taste test we did with our niece. Enjoy. Can you say something for a second, just so we can see if it shows up?
Hello.
Yep, there you go.
Hello.
You don't have to be weird about it. But you probably do.
Chicken.
Chicken? No.
Chicken wing.
Chicken wings? No, this is peanut butter.
Do you like peanut butter?
I don't know.
You don't know? Well, let's find out if you like peanut butter.
All right.
What kind of peanut butter do you have at home? What do you usually eat when you have a peanut butter sandwich?
I never ate a peanut butter and jelly sandwich before.
Your mother seems to be disputing that very vociferously with her face.
They like the smooth. I like chunky.
What brand do you usually get?
Jif.
This is Just regular old Jif.
This is Jeff.
I like crunchy peanut butter.
No?
Okay.
What do you think of that?
I love it.
Yeah.
It's great on crackers.
It tastes like childhood to me.
Is it a thumbs up? Thumbs up.
Double thumbs up.
What's the next one you got?
This is the roasted Spanish peanuts.
Okay.
Let's do that one next.
This one? So
Yeah.
this is made with a different type of peanuts than the Jif is.
Me too.
Thank you.
What's wrong with it?
It's not like, it's not too good like that one.
What's wrong with the flavor?
Too oily?
Yeah.
Not sweet?
It's not that sweet. This one's sweeter than that one because that one has
Okay.
oil than that one.
All
Take
right.
another bite.
Okay.
That's my little snack.
What did you think of that one?
I don't know. They kind of taste the same. It was a little oily, but
It's
Okay.
Spanish peanuts are a little more oily. That's why they're great snacking because they roast. They have a more robust flavor.
I don't think they were. It was as sticky as the first one too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's this next one you probably won't like at all.
This is standard texture peanut butter. It's not quite as creamy, but we'll see if it's any good.
That is disgusting.
What do you think is disgusting about it?
The peanut butter.
Is it just that you don't like it because it's oily and goopy?
No
But-
sweet.
Not that sweet, but it's like this weird. It's a weird taste.
It's a weird taste.
I can see that. This is confirms what study after study says kids do not like natural peanut butter. They just don't like it.
Get that out of my face.
All right. Your mom doesn't like pickles.
Sweet pickles.
Those sweet pickles.
Here's one with just a little pickle.
This used to be super fancy in the olden days.
This is peanut butter with a sweet pickle on top. Okay.
I'd say no, huh?
No.
Weirdly enough, I kind of like it.
I would say I'm not a big bread and butter pickle fan, but this sort of takes the edge off of what I don't like about the bread and butter pickles.
I get that.
That was disgusting.
Yeah, for those of you who do not have visuals on this, she actually walked over to the trash can and spit that out into it.
You just tried garden cream with the all-natural peanut butter. This was considered super fancy back in the golden age of the Gilded Age, excuse me. Like rich people would spend like lots of money, like $10, $1, $2, and back.
I have no idea what that would taste like. Like I tasted, but it tasted super weird.
So it's got a little cream cheese and herbs on the bottom.
They used to make it with lettuce, that, and herbs on top. It's weirdly not bad.
The cream
I like
cheese,
it.
the cream cheese is like different. It has vegetables inside,
Mhm.
but the one that we have now doesn't have vegetables at the front. Just a regular cream cheese.
What do you think about the flavor?
Did it make that peanut butter taste better?
No, and it made it even worse. Like the flavor, it was like crazy, super crazy. If you,
Is
me,
it too much flavor?
yeah, it's too much flavor for me. I'm 6 years old only. Do you like that one?
Surprisingly, I do. I don't like bread and butter pickles. I like dill pickles like your mom.
Yeah.
They're salty and not sweet.
I don't.
But this
I
takes the edge off a little, I think, of the sweetness with the saltiness of the peanut
Oh,
butter.
you.
Well, thank you for participating in our little taste test, Miss Shirley.
Do you
What was your
like-
favorite one? You just live regular old Jeff, huh? Hard to be.
She can't talk because she's eating one.
Key sources for this episode include John Krampner's Creamy and Crunchy, An Informal History of Peanut Butter, Christina Vella's George Washington Carver, A Life, and Small Targeted Dietary Changes Can Yield Substantial Gains for Human Health and the Environment by Katerina S. Stylianou, Victor L. Fulgoni II, and Oliver Jolliet. Connections! Peanut butter wasn't the only food item introduced at the 1904 St. Louis World's Fair and Louisiana Purchase Centennial Exhibition. Waffle cones also made their debut at the fair. The concessionaire was Benton Harbor, Michigan's House of David, a Christian Israelite sect headed by the notorious King Benjamin Purnell. We talked about Purnell in the Series 5 episode, Exceeding Great. While researching this podcast, we learned about the annual Peanut Butter Festival in New Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. That's just down the road from where we are, so we're sure as heck going up there this September. Maybe we'll see you there. This is the last episode of Series 9. We're going to take a few weeks off to recharge our batteries and get back on schedule, and then we'll see you at the beginning of March. Until then, quicquid minime sciant, optime scire. Crunchy or Wrong was written and produced by Dorothy White for the Ancient and Esoteric Order of the Jackalope, and was released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 4.0 international license. All rights reserved, all wrongs reversed. The script for this episode, with sources, links, and more, can be found on our website, orderthejackalope.com. That's orderthejackalope.com with hyphens between the words. Do you have opinions about this episode? Why not share them on our Discord server? Link in the show notes. Or tag us on social media. We can be found at Order Jackalope on Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, and Tumblr. If none of those options works for you, you can always send us an old-fashioned email at jackalope@orderthejackalope.com. We're recruiting new lodge members. We'll initiate anyone into the secret mysteries. All they have to do is share a secret mystery of their own. Visit our website and click Join Us for more information.